I'm curious how many of y'all heard remnants of Mary's Magnificat in that last reading. Did you know that her prayer of a world turned upside down came from another prophetic mother long gone by Mary's time? Hannah, the second and assumed barren wife of Elkanah, gave birth to a child who would one day appoint the first two kings of Israel, creating the kingdom of Jerusalem, setting our story into the empirical journey it's about to go on. And I love that the moment Hannah hands her son over to the temple, she prays for justice to eviscerate the powerful and lift the needy from the heaps of human waste so that they inherit the seat of honor. Hannah's canticle sets a match to injustice. In fact, while Mary casts a vision of a subversive better way, Hannah douses the entire system in gasoline and seems to challenge anyone to prove to her God won't shatter a power-hungry fool. And what struck me the most this week was the realization that Hannah's legacy as this audacious woman of God is barely known by most Christians today. I guess I really shouldn't be surprised. A woman who spurned tradition and refused to submit to traditional roles, excluding her from inner temple life and rituals, isn't well known in our patriarchal Christian religion. Ooh, shocker. Despite her status as a second wife, despite her social place as a woman, and despite her barren status, Hannah did not accept the way the things were. She alone fervently prayed for a child. She alone named him Samuel, God hears. She alone raised him into a little boy, and she alone dedicated him to the temple. And here's the thing that I love the most. Just as much as I believe Mary saying her subversive prayer over Jesus as he fed from her body, I absolutely believe that Hannah fed Samuel the wily ways of revolution from the moment of his conception until the day she handed him over to the temple. Women have always shaped the very definition of liberation. While the patriarchal image of freedom is conquest, our ancient mothers danced to a hymn where the bows of the mighty are broken. Their feet thundered for the fount of justice to judge the wicked who oppress. Their freedom reverberates throughout history, stirring the hearts of God's people towards love in action. True children of these women have no time for thoughts and prayers. They are active and transgressive, fighting against systems meant to shackle. Hannah and Mary are here to testify that when prophetic women get to work, nothing can stop them. Isabella Baumfree was another such prophetic woman. She was born enslaved to her Dutch-speaking parents. I mentioned that her first language was Dutch because at 9 years old, she was ripped from her family and sold to enslavers who only spoke English. By the time that she was 13, she was sold to her final master, John Dumont, who violated her body in every way possible and later impregnated her while she was married to another one of his slaves. After Dumont backed out of his promise to set her free, Isabella spun what she thought she owed Dumont, which was about 100 pounds of wool. Afterwards, at the age of 29, she left with her infant daughter, Sophia. She was forced to leave her 4 other children behind. And when later accused of running away, she said, "I did not run off, for I thought that wicked. I walked off, believing that all to be right." She found her way to the home of Isaac and Maria von Wagner's, who took her and her baby Sophia in. Isabella soon learned that her 5-year-old son, Peter, had been illegally resold to an enslaver in Alabama. So with the help of her new family, she filed a case against Peter's illegal owner with the New York Supreme Court system. Using the name Isabella von Wagner, and after months of legal battles, her son was returned to her. And she became one of the first Black women to go to court against a white man and win. And then on Pentecost Sunday of 1843, Isabella changed her name. Isabella Baumfree von Wagner became Sojourner Truth. She told her friends, "The Spirit calls me and I must go," and she immediately left to preach about the abolition of slavery. She joined the Northampton Association of Education and Industry in Florence, Massachusetts, which was founded by abolitionists who also supported women's rights, a time when those two categories were not in sync with one another. While she lived and worked in the community, Truth befriended abolitionists William Lloyd Garrison, Frederick Douglass, and David Ruggles. Through those friendships, she soon delivered her first public anti-slavery speech. 6 years later, Sojourner Truth's dictated memoirs were published by William Lloyd Garrison. Her message of justice for all led her to speak at the 1851 Women's Rights Conventions in Akron, Ohio. There, she delivered her famous speech, later titled, as we know it, "Ain't I a Woman?" She continued speaking nationally and helped countless enslaved folk escape to freedom. When the Civil War started, she used her voice and urged young men to join the Union cause and used her body, hands, and mind to organize supplies for Black troops. After the war, she was involved with the Freedmen Bureau, where she helped freed folks find jobs and build new lives. While she was also in DC, she lobbied against segregation, and in the mid-1860s, when a streetcar conductor violently tried to block her from riding, she made sure that he was arrested and won her case against him for his violations against her autonomy. Sojourner Truth spent her entire life liberating herself and her people. Her faith was not for the thoughts and prayers folks either. Her speech at the Women's Rights Convention lifted Black women and stood them side by side, Black men and white women, at a time when suffragists only fought for white women and abolitionists only fought for Black men. Unfortunately, much like Hannah's prayer, most of us have not heard Sojourner Truth's real speech. Frances Gage was a white feminist and a close friend to Elizabeth Stanton and Susan B. Anthony. She published a version of Truth's speech from 1851 in the New York Independent in 1863, a full 12 years after the speech was given. Gage changed most of Sojourner's words, and she rewrote the speech with an unmistakably demeaning Southern slave accent. Remember, Sojourner Truth was raised and born in New York. Dutch was her first language. The way in which she was depicted throughout history to this day was still meant to demoralize and diminish her testimony. As we celebrate the prophetic voice of women, I want us to listen to Sojourner Truth's speech as she approved it for publication less than a month after she gave it at the convention. By the way, it was published in 1851, less than 3 weeks after she gave the speech to the anti-slavery bugle that was ran by one of her friends. They actually sat down together and looked at the transcript that he had written when he was attending the convention. So as firsthand account as we can get at this time, we get to hear her words. Of course, I will be reading this, and it's not quite her words, but I do ask for that forgiveness. May I say a few words? I want to say a few words about this matter. I am a woman's right. I have as much muscle as any man and can do as much work as any man. I have plowed and reaped and husked and chopped and mowed, and can any man do more than that? I have heard much about the sexes being equal. I can carry as much as any man, and I can eat as much as any man if I can get it. I am as strong as any man now. As for intellect, all I can say is if women have a pint and a man a quart, why can't she have her pint full? The poor man seemed to be all in confusion and don't know what to do. Why, children, if you have women's rights, give it to her and you'll feel better. You'll have your own rights and they won't be so much trouble. I can't read, but I can hear. I have heard the Bible and have learned that Eve caused man to sin. Well, if a woman upset the world, do give her a chance to set it right side up again. The lady has spoken about Jesus, how he never spurned women away from him, and she was right. When Lazarus died, Mary and Martha came to him with faith and love and besought him to raise their brother, and Jesus wept, and Lazarus came forth. And how came Jesus into the world? Through God who created him and woman who bore him. Man, where is your part? But the women are coming up blessed by God, and a few of the men are coming up with them. Man is in a tight place. The poor slave is on him. Woman is coming on him, and he is surely between a hawk and a buzzard. Beloveds, the prophetic voice of justice is not idle nor inactive, regardless of whether or not we are listening. God's topsy-turvy kingdom is always breaking into our world, challenging social norms, and casting a vision of what could be. Mother Hannah, Mother Mary, and Sojourner Truth knew this. Their faith wasn't limited by the shackles of their time. Their voices ring throughout history, inspiring generations of freedom fighters to rise up and proclaim that God is still speaking. As we live and move in this world, our faith calls us to open our eyes to the patterns of evil, to see the faces and know the stories of those we systematically deprive. Our ancient faith is not a ticket to some suburban whitewashed heaven with streets of gold. Our ancient faith radicalizes and empowers people to believe in and fight for a world of equity and justice in the here and now. As we go into this week where our nation celebrates its own problematic history of freedom, may we join our ancient mothers in the dance to a hymn where the bows of the mighty are broken. May our feet thunder for the fount of justice to judge the wicked who oppress. May freedom reverberate throughout history, stirring our hearts towards love and action. May we be true children of these women who have no time for thoughts and prayers. And may we lean into our true name, beloveds, made in the image of God, sent and cherished for this world. Amen.